This is a 2013 Mercedes-Benz SL65 AMG, and it's a monster. It has 620 horsepower and 740 pound-feet of torque from a twin-turbocharged V12, and it had a sticker price of around $230,000 when it was new 10 years ago. These days, it's a lot cheaper, but it's still a beast, and today I'm going to review this SL65 and show you all the quirks and features. Before I get started, big news, this SL65 is currently being auctioned live on Cars and Bids, which is my enthusiast car auction website. This is a very special car, twin-turbo V12 Mars Red, one-owner SL65 that's been in California since new, and it could be yours. So, once you finish watching this video, click the link in the description below to head over to the live auction for this SL65 AMG, where you can bid on it and buy it only on Cars and Bids. Alright, now on to the quirks and features, the SL65 AMG. And as you can imagine, there is a lot of cool stuff to discuss, but let's just start with the coolest, and that would be the powertrain. Like I said, twin-turbo V12, 6 liters with 621 horsepower and 738 pound-feet of torque. Massive numbers that put this ahead of a lot of supercars, historically, and even supercars of its day. This thing just has so much power and an absolutely massive engine. As you're seeing, it's huge in this engine bay. Big engine, big power, and that was the big party trick for the SL65. Now, as you can imagine, this vehicle came at a pretty steep price, being the flagship Mercedes-Benz convertible, the top of the line, and the top of the line version of the top of the line car. It was quite expensive. In fact, I have here the original window sticker, which quotes a sticker price of just under $228,000 for this car, and that was back when it was new 10 years ago. It was huge money, but it had a huge powertrain, and it was the top Mercedes-Benz. Now, fortunately, thanks to the magic of depreciation, this car is a lot cheaper today. Also worth pointing out, since we're under here, the little plaque on the engine that says exactly who hand-built this particular engine, and you can see it's Michael Kubler, who has developed a bit of a following as an AMG engine builder because he builds a lot of these twin-turbo V12 engines that go into some pretty serious cars, including this one. But as you can imagine, the top version of the top Mercedes-Benz luxury convertible has a lot of other cool stuff beyond just a massive and impressive powertrain, so let's talk through the rest of this car's quirks and features, starting with the roof. This is a convertible with a power retractable hardtop, but maybe the coolest part is that when it's on, when the top is in place, you can choose just how much light comes through it with a feature Mercedes-Benz calls Magic Sky Control. You press this button here near the rear view mirror, and you can see that instantly changes the roof from being totally see-through to now a lot darker and dimmer, and you can just press that over and over again depending on how much light you want to let into the cabin. If it's a hot sunny day, you don't want to get hot, you press that, it's darker. If you want to see the sun, the trees, you press it again, you can see out. It is a very, very cool feature. And it gives you some of the benefits of a sunroof, even though you also have a convertible top, which is pretty nice. You kind of expect something like that for $228,000. And next up, another cool feature in here is under this little panel, you have all of the controls for the top, and you also have a button that will roll down all of the windows at once, which is a neat feature to have. Let's say you're driving along with the top up, but you want to get a breeze going in the interior, press that button and all the windows are down. You don't have to do them all individually. Or let's say you're driving along with the roof down and you're getting too much wind inside the car, well, press that button the other direction, all the windows roll up at once. Again, don't have to do it individually. That is a pretty cool idea. And speaking of driving along with the roof down and getting too much wind or too cold, Mercedes has another solution for you if that's a problem. This little button here, it's like a seat with an arrow, controls a feature Mercedes calls Air Scarf, and that's a heating system that's built built into the seat right around your neck. You can see the vent right here. If you're driving along on a cold day, but you still want to have your roof down, enjoy your convertible, you can do that. Just turn on air scarf and you get extra heating delivered directly to your neck to help keep you warm, which is a fantastic idea. Basically a scarf of air, hence the name. And there's more luxury in this interior, as you might expect. Speaking of the seats, they also come with massaging. You can access the massaging function in the infotainment system. Pretty cool to see that in a 10-year-old car, massaging seats. And you also have dynamic seat bolsters. And basically what that means is you can drive around with this car, giving you a luxury seat experience, wide and comfy. But once you start going around corners, the seat bolsters instantly inflate to keep you in your seat. And that way you get the benefits of a sport seat and a comfort seat in one, which is a pretty cool idea. I've had Mercedes models with this feature before, and I think it's fantastic, and I wish more cars had it. And speaking of the seats, you take a look at them and you can see beautiful quilted leather. Looks very nice, looks very upscale, just like you might expect from a top-of-the-line model like this one. You also have similar quilted leather on the door panels, as you can see, and it's sort of in place there with full leather and contrast stitching as well. So you have high-quality leather just about everywhere you look. And in the spots where you don't have leather, you have carbon fiber. This car has a lot of interior carbon fiber trim, as you can see, in the center console, the dashboard, the door panels, and everything looks really nice, really high quality between the carbon and the leather. It looks like the price tag suggests it might. But anyway, next up, another interesting quirk of this interior is what's behind the seats. Now, Mercedes-Benz SL models have always been two-seaters. With a few little exceptions, they've pretty much always been two-seaters since they came out back in the 1950s, and this is a two-seater. But you do have some extra storage behind the seats. You fold the seat forward and you can see there's a little shelf back here where you can put stuff if you want to just toss it in the car, keep it in the interior, which is a nice item. In fact, behind the driver's seat, you even have a little storage lid. You can open it up and there's a little bin in there where you can put stuff to keep it from rolling around, little extra interior storage. You also have back here another little storage compartment with this roll top lid. You pull it back and there's extra storage and a cup holder, which pretty much cannot be reached from the seats. You gotta like reach all the way back and it'd be very awkward to actually use it, but it's there, sort of an unusable cup holder between the seats. Now, that supplements two other cup holders you can see here. Those are obviously a lot more rational, usable cup holders, but you have that third one if you need it. And by the way, speaking of the center here, worth pointing out a few of the controls in the center console. This is your gear selector, kind of unusual, but you pull it down for drive, up for reverse, and you have the AMG logo embossed in leather onto the top, which is cool. You also have this dial here that changes the drive mode, C for comfort, S and S Plus for sport, and M for manual shifting if you want. Then there's the AMG mode you can press for a sportier driving experience, and this suspension button that you can push for a sportier suspension feel as well. Those are your center performance controls in this car. And next up, let's discuss the roof situation in the SL65, which is rather unusual. In fact, this car is pretty special because it allows you to have a full trunk, a full rear storage area that is large and useful, and it lets you put the power-operated folding hardtop down. You can do both, which is unusual in hardtop convertibles, but the trick is you can't do both at the same time. So the way this works is you open up the trunk and you can see there's this little carpeted divider here, and this divider can move forward or backwards, and that determines exactly how you're going to be using your trunk. If you have the divider down like it is right now, then you can put the roof down, and that's no problem. It lands on top of the divider and everybody's happy. But if you push the divider back, then you have access to your full trunk. And as you can see, it is a large size trunk, like what you'd get in a mid-size family sedan back here. But the problem is if you fill it up so much that the divider cannot clip back into place, then you can't put the roof down. So suddenly you have all this trunk space, but you can't use the roof. Nonetheless, you do have the capability for both in this car, extra storage and put the roof down, just depending on the position of this divider. Now, one other interesting thing back here is if you have the roof down, you can see open up the trunk and there's not really all that much ability for you to access the items you have in the trunk. You can't actually get back there because the roof and the divider are sitting on top of it, but you have a way around that. This little button on the side of the cargo area, press that, and then the roof automatically lifts itself up a few feet so that you can then push the divider forward and get your stuff out of the trunk. Then to go and close the trunk, you just push the button again, the roof comes back to where it belongs, and then you press the trunk button and the trunk trunk actually closes. Now, if this seems complicated to you, well, it is. You have a power operating trunk, this carpeted cargo divider, a full power folding hardtop, and the hardtop can go all the way down or partially back up, and it has sensors to see if the divider's in place. It's a lot of stuff, but the result is a pretty practical car. You get a full hardtop, which is nice to have if you want to use your convertible in the winter, colder weather, and you get full trunk space. There's just a lot of thought that went into making all of that stuff possible. And anyway, since we're talking about the top, let's take a look at how the roof looks when it goes down. To put it down, you open up this little panel with the roof controls I showed you earlier. You pull in this little hoop with this obvious convertible diagram on it, and then the roof starts to go down. Take a look at how it looks when it does. By the way, one other interesting roof-related item with this car is the wind deflector. If you have the roof down and you want to decrease the amount of wind coming into the interior, I already showed you can roll up all the windows at once, but you can also press this button here in the same area with all the top controls, and it automatically raises this wind deflector. You can see it pops up directly behind you, and that helps wind pass over the interior rather than getting stuck and blowing around. And as you can see, the wind deflector also just goes right back down at the press of a button, so you can put it up, down, whatever you want, depending on how much wind you want to experience. But anyway, next up, since I'm around back, let's talk exhaust. You see back here you have the quad exhaust, which AMG models have. It's kind of an AMG signature, and this powertrain sounds pretty good. Take a listen. Now, as you can hear, that exhaust is a little bit subdued compared to other high-performance cars with big V12s, but this isn't intended to be loud and shouty. That's not what this car is. It's fast, but also kind of subtle. And speaking of that fast, another performance upgrade to this SL65 is carbon ceramic brakes. You can see them here. They were an option for this car, over $12,000 new for carbon ceramic brakes, obviously to reduce brake fade when you're driving your luxury convertible on the track. But back to that subtle thing for a second. You can see the gold calipers indicating the carbon ceramic brakes. They kind of stand out, but other than that, I like the fact that this car is quite subtle on the outside. Even though it's a twin-turbo V12 with supercar power, you don't have supercar-like shoutiness and show-offness. It just sort of looks relatively restrained. To most people who see this car, it just looks like another Mercedes-Benz convertible, even though it is in fact the very best Mercedes-Benz convertible with massive, massive power. Now, with that said, the number of AMG badges on the outside of this car goes a little far for me. You have AMG badge on the brake caliper, as you've seen. You also have AMG badging on the wheel itself, as you can see. You got that AMG badge on the trunk lid to let everybody know, and AMG on the exhaust tips on both sides. AMG, AMG, just to tell everybody it's an AMG. In fact, you even have an AMG badge on the door lock, as you can see here, as if it's telling everybody, hey, I have AMG door locks. It seems like a little bit of overkill. All right, driving the SL65. Now, years ago on this channel, I reviewed an SL65 Black Series with the same engine, and I did a CL65 and a G65 as well at various times. But the thing about this engine in this car, I've also done Paganis that have this engine because this powertrain powers the Pagani Huayra. And I love this engine. I love this engine. Don't love it in the Huayra, actually, because I think that car should be a little bit more immediate and aggressive, and this engine is more of like a floor it and get going and go and go up to 200 miles an hour and cruise and sit there. This is an Autobahn killer engine that can just like do amazing high-speed passes and amazing high-speed just sitting there going crazy speeds. I don't think it's a supercar engine, but I actually think it works reasonably well in a car like this or a car like the CL65 or the S65, big car that you could just sit in and cruise and cruise and cruise. So let's talk about this engine. What makes me love it so much? Just insane acceleration at all levels, insane amount of power, insane amount of torque. I think that's the thing that really gets me. I love the fact that when you put your foot down at 80, you still can pass someone at over 100 and just feel like nothing. Like a slight push of the foot and you're just gone around them. It feels so much. Like, it just feels like there is so much engine there, whereas a lot of these smaller, newer turbo engines, they can deliver the power and the acceleration, but they feel stressed doing it. You get road noise. It's just not the same. This engine just feels like it could do so much more than it does, and it does a lot. Now, interestingly, as smooth as this powertrain is, and just pure muscle, the ride of this car is not especially smooth. This is actually a problem that I had with a lot of AMG cars from this era. I owned recently a 2012 E63, and it annoyed me about that, and it annoys me about this car. The suspension's just really harsh. These were intended to be sporty performance cars, the AMG cars from this era. They were supposed to be like the high performance versions, of course, but this was before Mercedes-Benz had really greatly figured out adaptive suspension technology, and so even in comfort mode, just sort of basic driving around without the suspension button pushed, it is a harsh ride. Going over bumps, going over pavement stuff, it's pretty rough. The car kind of beats you up more than you might expect from an SL. Now, what Mercedes would reply to that is, well, hey, you bought the SL65, you bought the performance one, or at least that's what they would have said in 2013. These days, you don't have to make such a trade-off when you buy a performance car. You can have a comfortable ride when you want, and then push a few buttons and have a really harsh ride when you're on a racetrack. This car kind of feels like it wants to be in, you know, high performance handling mode at all times, and it's a little bit of a pretty harsh ride. Now, as for this interior, pretty nice in here. A lot of Mercedes-Benz models from this era did not have the nicest interiors. I was always a little bit disappointed by like the 2008 to 2013-ish era for Mercedes-Benz. A lot of plastic, a lot of stuff didn't look all that great in a lot of models, but not in this one. Mercedes-Benz knew for this price point they needed to step up the game, and they did that, and this car looks pretty good as a result. I'm gonna floor it here. Whoa! Oh, man, this car just moves. It just has power for days. Again, not like raucous throw you back in your seat power. The car doesn't do that despite 620 horsepower. It's more just like this power builds and builds and builds, and then you look down and you're going 100 plus. There's not that much drama. There's not that much like smash you back like an electric car has. But it just feels like it can do anything for as long as you need it to. Now, one interesting thing about this SL, which is the R231 SL, I have complained about this car in the past. Came out for the 13 model year, and this is a 13. I have complained that by the time it got to this stage in the SL's life cycle, it had started to feel like kind of an old person car, slow and luxury focused, instead of like the amazing supercar that the original 300 SL and the Pagoda that they were. This car doesn't feel like that as much. The steering and handling is a lot sharper. In fact, the car changes directions relatively quickly. I'm quite surprised by it. It feels a lot more spry than other SL models, which kind of makes you start to wonder, you know, could they have done this to other SLs? This was hiding under this all this time, and the SL became such a kind of relaxed old man's cruising car. Well, this one isn't. It's just a shame because you're kind of lumped into that when you're driving an SL, but this car definitely feels a lot more alive, a lot more exciting in terms of steering and handling. It feels like it's actually pretty tossable and throw-aroundable, which is something I never thought I'd be saying about an SL from this era, but it does. There were some great improvements to the SL65 to make that possible. Now, part of those improvements come at the trade-off of the ride quality, which is what I complained about earlier, but if you're looking for a more sporty car, this is certainly that. And so that's the Mercedes SL65 AMG. This car really is a monster. Massive power with a massive engine up front delivering it, and thanks to the magic of depreciation, it's a lot more affordable now than it once was, and it could be yours on Cars and Bids. Anyway, now it's time to give the SL65 a DOUGSCORE. And the DOUGSCORE is here, 60 out of 100, which places the SL65 here against rivals. It actually does quite well, and it should. A big V12 up front, massive power, and significant depreciation over the last decade. In fact, it falls just behind the Ferrari California, which has no V12 and a bit of the cheapest Ferrari stigma, though the California is more exciting to drive. Overall, I love the SL65 AMG, but I especially love it at today's pricing versus its massive original sticker price.